Welcome to the Faster, Easier, Better show. This podcast is short, fun, and jam-packed with good ideas that you can start using right away.
Welcome to another episode. I'm your co-host, Ellen, along with my co-host, that is Lee, and we are starting a 3-part series called Nature, Songs, and Seasons. And today's episode, we're going to look at how nature can make us more efficient. And Lee is with us. We don't really have a bird.
No, but you watch certain things that take place in nature and think, wow, that reminds me a lot of things I see that have been developed mechanically. I mean, we look to nature for ideas for what we can build, right? Some of the things like the spider's webs and then like that Kevlar and things. There's some similarities, between the strength of that fiber and how light it is. Anyway, long story short is, yes, if we start paying attention to some of the ways that nature shows us the path, and all we have to do is follow it, we will find all kinds of shortcuts and ways that we can do things in a more, you ready for this? Natural way.
Natural way. Well, I was going to mention that one of the things that has been done, the Harvard Review found this out a few years ago, did a study, and that if you work where you can see nature, if you could work in a park, that would be like the best thing. But even when you're working at home or the office, if you can have nature of some sort in your face or that you can look at, you tend to be more efficient. And to follow through with you, if you have nature in front of you, you're going to probably be a little more inspired by what you see. And the ideas of coming up with things that are natural are going to be more often, they will more often occur.
Yeah, and when you're looking for inspiration or ideas or just for, ingenuity ways, that wasn't said very well, but you know what I mean. I mean, you take I'll just take an example. Let's take the pelican, for instance. So the pelican flies close to the water because there's a buffer there. It's like a pillow of air. So they float. So you see them maybe one or two flaps of the wings, and then they just glide. That's the most efficient way for them to fly. They also will fly in a formation, and so they'll have a leader who's kind of cutting the wind, and they're all in line behind him. Sometimes they'll fly in a V, sometimes in a U shape, but when they're going into the wind, they'll fly in a straight line, and then they rotate leaders. The leader gets tired, he goes to the back. They're not afraid to let somebody else lead, even if they're not quote-unquote called the leader. They just, hey, you're up. Go do the best you can and, break that wind for us to make it easier for all of us. When they fish, they try and flap their wings and get all of the fish into the shallows so it's easier for them to dive down and grab them. But they work together. I mean, there's 3 things that we can learn from pelicans. Right. Imagine if we studied not a seabird, but actually, I think the pelicans are kind of a cool bird. They're underrated. But
right. Obviously, you've studied them.
Oh, I can go deeper, but I don't think in a full 5-minute episode people want to hear all about the pelicans and how they learn from each other. There was these pelicans in Monterey Bay, and they used to just feed off the scraps from the tuna fishermen. But then the tuna fishermen in the industry started to dry up. And then they didn't know how to fish anymore because they were so used to getting the free handouts.
Oh.
And so they were starving to death. So they brought in some pelicans from Florida. They thought, well, they would, interbreed and eventually there'd be a new, more self-sufficient pelican. And with a couple weeks, the pelicans of Monterey Bay were watching the Florida pelicans and how they fished and said, oh, I could do that. Bada bing, bada boom. The pelicans were saved.
Ah. Well, yeah, that's a deep nature story I wasn't expecting. But, right there, you
underestimate me.
I do underestimate you. But right there, we've got not afraid to let somebody else lead, because sometimes you got to drop back and rest and recover. And obviously they learn from each other. They put the fish in areas that it's easier to do things. I mean, wow, we could do a whole pelican podcast. I don't think
we
so.
just did.
We just sort of did. So this is true. So like looking at nature right there, we've got some wonderful examples of how you can be more efficient. So yeah, we look at nature, we follow nature, surround yourself with it to be personally more productive and efficient, and then learn from what you see. The pelican will show us the way. All right. Go look at pelicans if you've got one. You've got them around you. If not, look them up online. But always be back with us again next week for another episode.
Caw-caw, caw-caw.